Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephan Erasmus, and I would like to welcome you to a new radio program called KREATIF. In KREATIF, we would like to start exploring aspects around art and everything in the art world. So we will be engaging in art or in discussions with artists, arts organizations, galleries, dealers, and start unpacking some of the ideas that gets people to make the work they do, and some interesting facts about their works. And with dealing with collectors, we would start looking at what drives them to collect and how do they approach the art of collection, and arts organizations, how they impact in the art world and how they see themselves transforming the art world. And then, of course, we'll talk about the art of collecting. How do you start collecting art? And how to do your homework about artists, and what the main motivation might be around starting your own collection. But before I carry on droning, today I have two guests in the studio. The first guest is Fleur de Bondt from Studio Facture at 27 Boxes. Fleur, introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, my name is Fleur de Bondt. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, Fleur, tell us a bit about yourself, where you come from, and how you ended up with Studio Facture.
Well, I'm an artist. I started practicing in 2013. I've been involved in arts administration for the last 5 years, and I also started Studio Facture in January as a shared studio space and project space. Well,
what's quite interesting about you is that you actually started in the fashion world. How did you make the crossover from the fashion world into the art world?
Well, I studied the commercial side of fashion. I have two parents that are artists. It was a bit of a daunting thing for me to study fine arts. I thought that I could go into retail and kind of build my career on the side, and then after a few months of being in retail, I decided I'd rather bite the bullet and start developing my art career.
So I think that's one thing that a lot of artists face, particularly young artists, that they need to generate income, so they get a job. Generally is teaching art or working in an art gallery, and along the way the ambition of becoming an artist falls to the wayside. Tell us a bit about your time at Assemblage.
Yes, I started getting involved with Assemblage about 5 years ago. I did the peer mentorship program. I was a mentee, and then they asked me to intern for them in arts administration. Following that, I was asked to coordinate the peer mentorship program, and following that, I've been coordinating the R&B Talent Unlocked Artist Career Development Program. I also was the recipient of the African Arts Trust bursary. So I had a studio there and then stayed on up until I started Studio Facture.
Well, tell us a bit more about Studio Facture.
Studio Facture is a shared studio space and a project space. I started it because I wanted a space where you could work in close proximity with other artists and really learn to give and receive critique from fellow artists because it is a kind of open plan space. I also wanted a space where I could work until late at night and in my opinion not have to worry about any crime or anything like that happening to me. It's close to my home, and also what I wanted to do was utilize the foot traffic in the center, so kind of exhibit the artist's work while they're working, and customers can come into the space and they can ask the artist about the work, kind of creating a bigger connection. and also as a project space have artists come through and kind of curate a show where that wouldn't necessarily fit into the white cube.
Okay. Now, there's currently 3 artists in the space. Can you tell us a bit about the artist that is currently in Studio Facture?
Yes, so I have myself, I have Marguerite Visser-Sanders. She is currently developing a new body of work, but she specializes in painting and printmaking and woodcut. Then I have Stephan Erasmus, also in the space. He works with digital prints and words and text. And yeah, those are the artists that are in the space at the moment.
Okay. Now, because you have the project space, you currently have Protagonist on exhibition. Please tell us a bit about the exhibition and the motivation behind the exhibition.
Yes, I was approached by Anel van Niekerk from Women Kid for Growth. She wanted to do an exhibition on artists in response to sexual violence. So we sent a call out and artists responded with proposals. And the work that we have on show is basically work that the artists had made that had experienced trauma themselves or have close relatives that had experienced trauma. So the artworks that they created served as a form of catharsis and a kind of stand against violence. The proceeds of the exhibition go towards Women Geared for Growth and the rape recovery program that they're busy developing, which is still in its early phases and needs funding in order to grow and reach people.
Can you tell us a bit more about the rape recovery program?
The rape recovery program is basically a manual that guides people, victims of rape, through a process of healing and just a step-by-step reawakening and sexual reawakening.
Okay. Sounds absolutely fantastic that there's a program to help people push through the trauma of rape. Now, can you tell us a bit about one or two of the works on exhibition?
Yes. One of all the works are interesting. The one I find quite interesting is by an artist by the name of Kathleen Sawyer. She took the story of Little Red Riding Hood and did further research into it and found that the origins of the story is basically where the wolf represents a sexual predator, and the story is basically about this wolf luring this woman into his space, so that he can devour her. And then what is also said is that that the woman shouldn't have kind of strayed from her path, making the onus on the victim as opposed to the onus on the wolf who was the predator.
Okay, and you also have a work on the exhibition. Please tell us a bit more about your work, and because you're an artist, you can tell us a bit more about the process that you go through in creating work.
Sure. My current body of work is developing, but the theme that has been going on is I've been creating these weaponized, mechanized humanoids out of linoleum, but they are puppets, and I print them, and I sometimes print them in stop frame animation, and they basically are my response to humanity's also trauma. And I'd worked at a drug rehab in doing art therapy for the last year, and it was quite taxing to know that people don't always process things correctly, and they need a lot of assistance in processing things correctly so that they don't keep repeating things and habits and finding chaos in the world. So this body of work was in response to that, and these this kind of race or breed that I'm creating is able to process and defend and regenerate and move on.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And now I'm also going to welcome Ryan Hitchcock. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Hi, Stephan.
Now, I've known Ryan for many, many years. Ryan, you are involved at the art room.
That's correct.
Please tell us a bit more about the art room and what you do there.
The art room is an art gallery, contemporary South African art gallery. We're based in 4th Avenue in Parkhurst. We're a springboard for a lot of new and upcoming artists. We like to nurture young talent, but we also work with more established artists up into their mid-career terms and so forth. Apart from that, we are also a framing studio, and we specialize in framing fine art.
Okay, but in your space at the moment, you have an exhibition on. It's almost an employee exhibition.
That is correct.
The exhibition is called Colony. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Correct. You could say this is an all in-house project. Myself, I'm a photographer, fine art photographer, and then our framing consultant, Claire Zinn, is herself an artist. She's a painter, a printmaker. She draws, multi-talented. So Colony was created by us, framed by us, exhibited by us, and Colony draws on, how shall I say? She focused on insects, ants and bees who live in colonies. I focused on weeds, garden weeds. So what we get a lot of khaki bos here in the Highveld, morning glory flowers, dandelion seed puffs. And with that, we're trying to tell the story of human existence on the planet Earth, the way we colonized Earth, spread all over, and how we influence nature.
Okay. Well, I've gone to see the show, and it's absolutely beautiful, particularly some of Claire's paintings around, I think it was the bees. Those are absolutely exquisite. Now, apart from the exhibition, tell us a bit more about the framing side of things, because I think that is important, because framing in essence becomes incredibly important in how you conserve your artworks.
Correct.
And keep them safe.
Correct. An artwork is a commodity. It might be made on a piece of paper, but that is something that you can resell at some point in the future and most likely make a profit on it. So you need to preserve that. So a frame has two functions. On the one hand, it displays the artwork. So if you frame it beautifully, it also enhances the artwork. And the other thing is it protects the artwork. There's no point in buying a Kentridge etching and keeping it in a drawer where nobody can see it. You can't also pin it onto the wall with drawing pins, because that'll destroy the artwork or destroy value in the artwork. So fitting it into a frame is very important to preserve it, but you have to do it correctly, using acid-free materials and using the correct attachment methods and so forth, because ultimately at some point in the future you want to remove that artwork from the frame. In 10-15 years from now, you're not happy with the color of the frame or the style of the frame, or you want to sell it on, you want to cash in on your investment, and the next person need to be able to remove that artwork from the frame without there being any damage done. So you don't glue it down and so forth. You don't use acidic materials that will taint the paper. Basically, yes, it's a valuable document and it needs to be preserved.
Okay, you mentioned art as a commodity. Now, there's a couple of schools of thought surrounding the idea of art as a commodity. How do you feel about people flipping art, buying, keeping it for a bit, and then reselling it?
It's your money. You can do with it as you please. First rule on buying an artwork, you need to like the artwork, because you're going to live with it for a while. Yes, you can turn money on artwork, but it's generally not in the short term. My wife bought an etching many years ago for 10,000 Rand, and 20 odd years later she sold it for 350,000 Rand. But we had to live with that etching for 20 years, hung above the dining room table, was of a naked man. So if you don't like it and you can't deal with that, no, then it's not the right way forward for you. Shares in a company are much safer. But yeah, yes, it is a commodity, like I said, and there is value to it. So if you buy and you sell, that's your right. We have a young client who buys works from overseas. He has it framed with us very beautifully, very nicely, and sometimes he holds on to it and sometimes he moves it on. Yeah.
Well, I mean, because I collect as well. I prefer hanging on to the stuff because they start. I mean, you don't buy anything if it doesn't talk to you.
Correct.
I mean, there's an old adage that someone taught me or told me in art school is first you steal the eye, then you steal the mind, and then you steal the money.
Mm-hmm.
The function of an artist. So yeah, now you guys your framing is done very special because you actually do everything in-house.
Yes, we've got quite a large factory premises. I employ about 14 people in the factory, so compared to the average framer, which is maybe 2 or 3 people, we're a lot bigger. That means we have a lot of capacity as well. But one of the main reasons is that we buy the moldings in its natural state. We then cut and join our frames, and then we spray it afterwards. We can do it any color. We also have the ability to do gilding, so silver leaf, gold leaf, all types of hand finishes. So we can do a lot more than the average framer has capacity for. We can basically finish it to any way, any style, any way you wish. It's all made from timber, so it's all wooden frames. And that gives us the ability to really work with it and give it the right finish that best suits the artwork.
Okay, Ryan, we're quickly going to go to an ad break, and then we can carry on.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Grow! Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstylmedia.co.za.
Harnessing the power of talk radio. brandlive.co.za.
So welcome back to KREATIF, and we're talking to Ryan Hitchcock. Now, Ryan, I have to say, I love your surname. Hitchcock.
I've got an uncle by the name of Alfred, and it's true.
Now, we were talking about framing, that you cut your own molds, and framing is particularly done almost to order. Because I know of molds that were particularly cut for specific works in the past, which I think is phenomenal. Now, tell us a bit more about acid-free and the archival nature of...
Yeah, the most important thing when it comes to framing an artwork is to use non-acidic materials. If you think of a newspaper, you chuck it out in the sun for a week, it's going to turn yellow if not brown. That's because there's a lot of acidity in that paper. I mean, a newspaper is there for a day. The paper doesn't have to last longer than a day. So it's made from the cheapest paper and the cheapest methods possible. Therefore, there's a lot of acidity in that paper. So if you throw newspaper outside in the sun, it's going to discolor very quickly as it reacts with the UV light. So when we frame artworks, we must use mount boards, paper boards that were manufactured with no acid in the process or present in the board, because that acidity transfers onto your paper artwork, and that's when you get things like acid burn or foxing, where the paper starts to discolor and literally turns like a yellow brown and becomes brittle over a period of time. So that will obviously devalue your artwork. Unfortunately, we see that in a lot of older works. I would say that archival framing is a relatively new thing in this country. It was probably first introduced to South Africa in the 1990s on a more commercial level. Prior to that, it would have been only museums that actually knew how to what materials to use and how to use it. So when you look at a mount board where the window was cut open, you look at the core of that board. If that has discolored, then you know it's a it's an acidic board, rather a non-archival board, and that should rather come off your artwork.
I mean, one of the tests that I was taught in art school is if you want to test if excuse me, material is acid-free, you actually take a sheet of the paper, put it in your back window of your car, and drive around in the South African summer. and see how quickly it turns yellow. Now, obviously, that would influence all aspects of taking care of your artwork. Now, you guys also support and nurture young talent. And I'm particularly thinking about Moshe.
Yes, this is another in-house project, and that's coming up next month. So Moshe Chahoke is, let me rather say, his brother works for us at the factory, has been working for us for quite a number of years. And one day he came to me and he said, hey, my little brother can draw. I said, fine, show me something. So the next time he came back from home, he brought me a few drawings. And I noticed that, sure, this guy definitely has the ability to draw. So at the end of that year, I told his brother to, when they come back in the new year, he must bring his brother, little Moshe, to us, and he can come and help us out in the factory, work there, earn a bit of a wage, and let's see what we can do. So we then sent him off to Artist Proof Studio, where he learned a little bit about printmaking, but it turned out that his heart was more in drawing, just drawing with charcoal and pastel onto paper. He has a phenomenal ability to draw, natural talent to draw. All we had to do is introduce concept to his drawings. And since we frame several artworks every single day in our factory, it was easy for me to just point certain things out to him and say, look at this artwork, look at how this artist is telling his or her story, look at the methods they use in order to achieve that. And so he's learned. And to the point that next month he will have a small solo exhibition with us of, 11 or 12 artworks. And he's going to tell the story of him coming from a small village in Limpopo, moving to the big bad city, where now he lost his parents quite young, he lost his family quite young. It's just him and his brother who's still around. So as a young man, he didn't have much hope for the future. Now he's got a job, he's got his own place to stay, he earns money, and he gets to practice his art. He gets to put on paper the stories that are in his mind. And this upcoming exhibition of his will be to tell that story of him moving from the small village, coming to the city, and where now for him there are opportunities. There's a future that he can build and work towards.
Well, I've seen some of his work, and it is absolutely beautiful for a young talent. Now, he's not the only one. Tell us more about some of the artists that you...
The art room has been around for the last 11 years, having started out in Melville. It was started by my wife, Simonetta, and she's been in the framing industry for the last 30 years. So she has framed for, I think, generations of families, and she knows... I think she's probably framed an artwork by every artist who's ever produced anything in this country.
It wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me. So, over the years, nowadays you get a rock star like Nelson Makamo, and we used to work with Nelson Makamo many years ago when he still was a student at Artist Proof Studio and producing prints. I think of Lehlogonolo Mashaba. We've worked with him for the last 10 years. I think of Ramaruta Makoba. Deal with him all the time. And we've really seen these artists come from young little nervous oaks coming into the gallery, shaking as they hand over that first portfolio. And they've all become great artists, established artists in their own right. So it is great to nurture talent. It is great to give someone an opportunity. Everyone needs that first chance in life, and we are very happy to do that, to be that gallery that provides that. We don't want to know what you studied, where you studied, what you've done before. We look at the work that you bring to us, the work that you produce, and we look at the story that you're telling. And if the execution is there, if the concept is there and the execution is there, we'll give you a chance.
Well, I remember from the first time I walked into the framing shop down here in Melville with Simonetta, and just how much you guys have supported myself as well as numerous other artists. Okay, so Ryan, just very quickly, you're a photographer, an art photographer. Quickly tell us about this, about your work.
picked up a camera the first time in about 2006. I always thought I'd be a writer. I always wanted to write stories, but that didn't quite work out like that. Life got in the way. Then I picked up my first camera and I realized, I can still tell my stories that way. So I use digital medium. I use a digital camera, but I use a lot of old school methods with it, like adding pinhole adapters or just shooting through actual manual filters, and not so much creating the shot in Photoshop, but creating the shot in the camera right there in the moment. Modern day digital photography also brings us very amazing images. These cameras have incredible ability. You get pin sharp focus, you get saturated colors. So in a lot of my photography, I try to undermine that. I use Vaseline filters, I use smoked glass filters, various other colored filters. So my images are not necessarily pin sharp. And I play, like I said, with colored filters. So I'll take a landscape photo where the sky is green instead of blue. My main mission with that is to present to you that which you could see at any given day as you walk through the city, but to present it in a different manner, like in a way you would not have necessarily seen it or looked at it. So my work has got a bit of a dream-like quality, a bit of a fantasy-like quality to it. Maybe sometimes a bit nightmarish, working quite dark and sinister at times.
Yeah, almost like some of the work you have up on Colony now.
Yes, there were shots that I've taken, like I said, heavily filtered, and yeah, you would look at it, and some of them were taken at Emmarentia Botanical Garden, so it's a place that anyone in the city could visit, but I don't know if you've seen it like that before.
Well, I know for a fact I haven't. But now, just going back to framing, you've recently framed a phenomenal piece of work.
Yeah, it's truly a privilege to do what we do, to handle beautiful, beautiful artworks on a daily basis, and you never know what is going to come in next. So this young client that I mentioned earlier, the one day he came in with the work that he bought on an auction, and it was in a frame, and I looked at this, and it turns out it's an etching by Albrecht Dürer. Dürer was a contemporary of Leonardo da Vinci. So we're talking quite a while ago, and there's a mark on the paper, an inscription on the paper, which is both the signature of the artist and also the date, and that date was 1516. So that piece of paper is 502 years old. Not often we get to frame something that old. Not often we get to see something that old even living here in Africa. So yeah, that was quite a special moment. It was a small etching, very, very well preserved. First of all, they didn't have machines back in 1500, so that paper was handmade. And it's probably, it was actually confirmed to me by our restorer, that paper is better than most quality paper you will find today. First thing as I opened the artwork, I phoned our restorer and I said, is this thing truly 500 years old? Because I'd expect the paper to be quite brittle, fragile, and it was not. So yeah, that was a very, very special moment.
Well, I'm sure it was. I watched
In fact, there's actually, if you go to our Instagram page, which is the Art Room Parkhurst, there's a little video that we posted on this little artwork, just showing people a little bit and how it has been reframed.
I just wanted to mention that because that totally amazed me. And he was such a brilliant artist and so meticulous. Now, if people want to know more about the Art Room, where do they find out, and where are you located?
Yeah, we are located in Parkhurst, in 4th Avenue, Parkhurst. We have one of Joburg's most famous landmarks right next door to us. That's the Jolly Roger pub. So if you know where that is, we're right next door. You can find us on Facebook at the Art Room Parkhurst. We also, like I said, have got our Instagram handle and then our website. So yeah, give us a Google, you'll definitely find us, and come into our gallery. It's a nice friendly space. We play a bit of music in the background, so you can come in, discuss the artwork that is on view without being overheard, you can do it privately. We'll serve you a lovely coffee. There's probably a bottle of champagne in the fridge as well.
Well, Ryan, thank you very, very much. And thank you very much to our listeners. If you want me to discuss any particular matters on the program, please drop me a message on Facebook. You can find me at Creative Fine Art on Facebook. And would love to hear from you and what you would like to hear about. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Harnessing the power of talk radio. brandlive.co.za